listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 512. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Yahoo! Hejsan hejsan András! How are you? Very good work on the songs last week. We've gotten a very good feedback and very, very well deserved as well. I'm happy to say, well, I'm not happy to say, but I can't take credit for any of that. It was all you. Even though we at some point said, wouldn't it be fun if I played the guitar? No, not compared to what ended up here. It would have been if I play the guitar, it will be like I am like 13-year-old and only my parents would appreciate it. So this was much better. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and especially for your very kind words. I think the funniest reaction that we got, the feedback, was that it was much better than expected.
Yes. Right,
Thank you very much.
Well, okay.
Thank you very much for the...
But that's good. That's a way to succeed. I found also in your work life, you set the expectations very low and then perform above that and everybody thinks it's fantastic. I mean, the worst thing you could do, and this goes for everything, like in my profession, it's mostly about setting a budget, right?
Yeah.
People very often make the mistake of trying to impress the boss by submitting a very successful and profitable budget that they can never live up to. Mm-hmm. I've always said, no, do the opposite. Give them the worst budget you can ever come up with and get away with, and then you will exceed it, and everybody will think you're a hero. So that's how to succeed in life by Pontus Böckman. Read my book. It'll be out any decade now.
Ooh, any decade. Yeah. Actually, you have mentioned a couple of years ago that you were working on a book.
Oh, yeah. That was a decade ago, wasn't it? It's funny. I will make no promises again about that book. I came up with a pretty good idea. Well, I was happy with it anyway, for a science fiction movie. No, a science fiction book. And then I wrote something just to prove to myself I could write a full story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then when I'd done that, and I was very close to say, okay, this is pretty good. And then I reread it and said, this isn't very good. I will have to. So no, I can't really do that. So I'm still happy with the idea. Sometimes I think about it, but I don't know. I had fun doing it, and I guess that's as much as you can expect. So talk about setting expectations. Yes.
Yeah, this is how I deal with singing these days. Anyway, I'm just singing for fun, for my own entertainment. Sometimes that of my family, but they don't appreciate it that much. My mother used to love me singing, but that's over. Unfortunately,
see what happened to her. Sorry, too soon. I'm sorry about that.
No,
it was very
my
bad
singing
taste.
has nothing to do with it, fortunately.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Moving on.
But couldn't save her either. So we might do something like that occasionally in the future as well.
Not this week, though.
Our listeners don't mind it, but not this week, because this week we have a proper regular show. But since by the time this goes out, the calendar year 2026 will have already been started. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for bearing with us through these troubled times, and thanks for your continuing support of the European Skeptics Podcast, everyone. And I'd like to thank you, Pontus, as well, because it's an amazing journey with you.
Well,
doing
thank
this.
you, András.
and you put in an amazing amount of effort into this.
I think we all have.
I'm trying my best to live up to that, but it's without you, this would not be anywhere.
Can you believe we're on our 11th year now?
That's the thing. And you know what? We've been going on for 10 years, and we are incredibly thankful that you guys out there choose to include our show in your podcast feed. It puzzles me, but we are well aware that there is a massive competition for your attention. This is why we keep trying to provide you with a show that you find worth spending time listening to. And our listener base seems to be very stable, so thanks for staying, guys. And thanks for being with us when this year we celebrated both our 10th anniversary, as Pontus mentioned earlier, and our 500th episode, which is still, just saying it out loud completely boggles my mind. And it's been an incredible year with incredible people we got to meet and make part of this podcast as well. And we can only hope that what you've heard here in the last year or so helped you all get a better picture of what's going on in the world of skepticism throughout Europe. And we would really appreciate any feedback aiming at making this show a better one. As you know, we don't do it for our own entertainment. Although we do enjoy our weekly recordings, at least I do, and it's a lot of fun researching topics, but most importantly, we want to serve this community. Mm-hmm. We want to be building bridges for skeptics, as we say in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's such a nice community as well.
It is.
Well, about once per year or so, we get to meet up with people. And it's so nice to not just meet listeners, but also other podcasters. The skeptic community as such is a small one, but a very, very positive one, where everybody supports each other, and you invite each other over to the other podcast, and you try to build together against a common goal. And well, sometimes we feel that we fail, but at least we're trying, and it's very nice.
And if you want to meet us in person, you can invite us. we are more than happy to go and give talks and do live recordings if you're interested. Mm-hmm. But what we do this whole podcast for mostly is that we want to be a meeting place. We want to be a hub, if you will, for skeptics, bringing the doers together so that with our joint efforts, we can probably try and make the world a better place through the propagation of science and skepticism. So this is another call. So if you or anyone whose books or works you've heard of might have something to share with the community that the movement can benefit from, please let us know. And in the meantime, you can throw news items, names, and activities of quacks or interesting words from your own language that we both love. We are language buffs, both of us.
As well, yes.
Yeah, as well. And history. So if you want to share them, we might not be able to find all of them on our own. So it's a great help if you let us know about them. Mm-hmm. And we are eternally grateful to all of you who have already done so. Most of your suggestions or things you've sent our way have eventually made it to the show, thus making all of you important contributors. So please keep doing that. Or if you haven't yet, please consider becoming one of those contributors, because we appreciate that very, very much. But, of course, this show being completely free to download for all, your voluntary financial contributions are also very much appreciated. You can send us a one-off donation to our PayPal account, or if you want to help with recurring micro donations, you can do that on Patreon. So again, thank you. And please bear with us through the calendar year 2026 as well, and hope to meet you in person soon. Perhaps at the upcoming European Skeptics Congress in Liverpool between the 16th and 18th of October. So who knows?
I'm counting on that. I'm counting on meeting you there at least.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. More about that, not on this episode, but later on in early spring this year, I should say.
Yes.
More information will come out about that. Okay. So you mentioned this is a new year, but this is the first episode of this year, and I have some reflections on the last year as well before we get into the regular segment. So the first things are just my personal reflections, just things that have stuck in my mind, things that were important. And the first one is that it seems to be the first year when AI clips and images really became as common as we thought and knew actually that they would be at some point. And now it's come to the point that when everything I see online, especially on social media, my first thinking is this must be AI. And that's scary, because that means
it's disturbing.
Yeah, it's disturbing because you can't trust anything anymore. We knew that it would happen, but this is the year when it actually came to be, really.
I don't know when exactly, but I think it was sometime in October that I read an article that claimed that we have reached a point that content on the internet is about 50% AI generated already.
Yeah. Feels like it anyway.
And it feels like it. Yeah, it definitely feels like it. I'm not sure it's accurate, but it definitely feels so. Yeah.
Yeah. And that takes me to another reflection. Most skeptics behave. I would like to say, but I do see skeptics sharing AI nonsense as well because it fits their agenda or what. So please don't do that. People that I don't want to name names, but people that I respect, well, have at least until now, seem to be sharing things, especially about Trump. But don't do that. Check first what it is. That's giving skeptics a bad name, and it's not really the right thing to do.
And of course, we keep banging on about how it's important to reflect on your own biases to avoid those. So when you come across something, the first thing you should do as a skeptic is question your judgment on it because of your biases. They might be just fitting your agenda, and that's why you want to believe it, even though it's AI generated. So don't do that.
Yeah, that's what I see happening, I think.
Yeah.
Mm. Another thing that I've noticed this year, and this is maybe my bias that has shifted, but this is the year that I've become much more aware of the prevalence of female health scams online. It's probably been there all the time. It's just that for some reason, I'm an old white man and I hadn't noticed before. But now that I've started to notice, I see it everywhere. And it's really, really disturbing. We talked about the free birther movement. And it's terrible, really, really terrible. And we should really try to make sure that we communicate about that so that as few people as possible fall for that. And another thing is that this year, I think we've also passed another threshold. People may say that this happened 10 years ago, but to me, it's now so obvious that politicians just blatantly lie about things without even reflecting on that's what they're doing. We've taken it for granted, really. At least some politicians, not just Trump, but others as well.
And not just Orban. Yeah.
They just spout out whatever kind of nonsense, and they never expect even to be questioned about it. And if they are questioned, they just ignore the question and would move on to something else. That is the new normal now, and that shouldn't be normal. And I mentioned Trump a couple of times. That's the last thing I want to mention. Trump 2.0 and RFK Jr.'s rise to power happened this year. And I think when historians look back on this year from the future, that will be some sort of milestone, and not a good one either. And
not only in the US, it's international. Yeah. So we still the ripple effect of that throughout Europe. No, that's a very wrong direction.
Yeah. So much of this is bad news. So I wanted to find some just nuggets of good news as well from last year. And this is pretty random, and it may not even be the best new things, but just a couple of things that I just managed to pull out here. One is that the FDA in the US, well, we talked about RFK Jr., not everything they do is bad. They have approved now a new type of medicine called lenacapavir. That's, I guess, how to pronounce it. And that can mitigate the spread of HIV. And if you get an injection twice a year from this, you are virtually safe from getting HIV, which is, I hadn't really registered with that, but I didn't know about that really, but apparently that's true. And that's a fantastic thing. Battling this disease for, is it 60 years? Or, no, it's not 60 years, but 40 years at least. And finally, maybe we can really get to grips with that.
And that's thanks to science.
Yeah, and thanks to science for that, yes. And speaking of injections, vaccination against HPV has been around for more than a decade. But now this year, we see significant effects against cervical cancer due to this vaccination. And it's a good step towards WHO's global strategy to accelerate the elimination of cervical cancer, as they say, as a public health problem. And there's even some hope that in the not too far future we can eradicate some strains at least of HPV altogether, and that's fantastic news. It's a big thing. I mean, it's the second most common cancer for female persons after breast cancer.
Yeah, and I think it was the ECDC as well mentioning that in order for the elimination of those types of cancer with these vaccinations, we need to vaccinate not only girls, but boys as well.
Many countries do that now. That's great. Yeah. Another thing that happened last year was that there was finally an agreement on the Ocean Treaty, quote unquote. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's bringing hope for marine ecosystems and people who rely on them, a global thing. It was way overdue. It wasn't as powerful as they hoped it would be. They've been working on it for years. Not all countries have signed it, so there are problems. But anyway, it's some progress anyway. Speaking of wildlife, a dozen species or so were brought back from the brink of extinction in 2025. One of them were the green turtle. So that's good news. So sometimes good things happen. Doesn't make big headlines always.
No.
The deforestation of the earth seems to be slowing down from a global point of view. I wasn't aware of that. There's a number of new records when it comes to green energy. For one thing, the combined output of wind and solar together overtook coal as the world's leading source of electricity. Not something I was aware of. I haven't seen that, but apparently that happened this year. And of course, there's more. There are some links I will put in the show notes, but we shouldn't drag on. But just a reminder, sometimes some things go in the right direction. We just tend to focus on the bad things, and we have to because they are really bad. But there are some lights in the dark as well.
Yeah, I have to mention that us skeptics, we are not inherently negative people. I mean, we don't like to go on and on and on about everything that's bad about society and pseudoscience and all that. But we are the kind of people that when we see something going in the wrong direction, we would like to do something about that, and we would like to help avoiding issues that come with that. So, the reason why we're criticizing pseudoscience, the reason why we're criticizing fake news and disinformation and the like, is because we do think that without these issues, society would be much better off, and we would like to do something about that. And one of the things that we could do is making sure that the information that we have at our hands is correct. It's well taken care of. And this is why I'd like to draw everyone's attention to Haley Stevens' article on The Skeptic. If some of our listeners don't know, Haley Stevens was on the show, I think even twice.
Maybe twice,
probably, yeah. But she made a name for herself as an investigator of ghosts and paranormal phenomena of the like. And she makes the case that as AI-generated encyclopedias are proliferating, Wikipedia deserves to be actively protected rather than taken for granted. Because let's be honest, we do take it for granted. We just assume that everything is on Wikipedia, but someone has to put it out there. So the core point of all this is that Wikipedia's real strength lies not in perfection, because it's obviously not perfect, but rather in its open, transparent, community-based model where sources are visible, disagreements are documented, and claims can be challenged while errors can be corrected. So it's pretty much how science works. And drawing on Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia's long-standing arguments, which were reiterated in a November article of Time magazine, Haley contrasts what we just talked about with AI-driven knowledge systems, which often present fluent answers without transparency, accountability, or clear sourcing. And they can confidently reproduce mistakes or bias at massive scales, instead of applying a meaningful correction mechanism that Wikipedia's rules inherently go towards. From a skeptical point of view, I think the message is straightforward. Convenience must not replace verifiability, and understanding cannot be outsourced to black box systems like most AI systems are. So Wikipedia, for all its flaws, still encourages the habit of checking your sources. And in the age of AI summaries and automated authority, that makes it more valuable, not less valuable. It's an added value. But Wikipedia's quality does not maintain itself automatically. And that is also mentioned by Haley. Efforts like guerrilla skepticism on Wikipedia, for example, run by the fairy godmother of this podcast, Susan Gerbic, show how an international network of skeptics actively works to improve articles, challenge pseudoscience, and strengthen sourcing without active confrontation. But also, there has been a long argument for many, many years about whether it's a good idea to do it as a group, because that inevitably brings in the idea of being in a conspiracy. As guerrilla skepticism on Wikipedia is often referred to as the secret cabal. So obviously, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, but I think overall it's definitely a very positive thing that we have these people take care of some of the content and making sure that it's factual and it's there for everyone to have access to proper information. So,
and we should point out that guerrilla skepticism on Wikipedia also has to follow all the rules on Wikipedia.
Exactly.
They are
every
not cheating.
Has to.
They just do a lot of pre-work before they actually add things to Wikipedia. So when they add it, it's in much better shape, but it's still open to be questioned by anybody on Wikipedia. And so they're not breaking the rules. They just do a good homework before they do that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's correct. Even with the wording, even the way you present the facts, you have to be objective. You can't have any kind of bias. Sometimes we are accused of being biased towards skepticism and science, but we still have to make sure that even the wording and the content itself, backed up by the sources, is always correct. And by the way, if someone is interested in joining that team and making an effort into making sure that Wikipedia stays in good shape, do contact Susan Gerbic, because she's always on the lookout for new editors.
Yeah. And the best way to do that is still on Facebook. That's how she wants to be contacted.
Yeah. Susan Gerbic. There are not too many people with that name, so you will find her.
No, exactly. So do that. I mean, if you don't like Facebook, well, I'm sorry, that's how she wants to be contacted. So.
Yeah. All right. But let's move. It's a bit of a longer intro to this podcast episode. But let's move on to the segment that we call TWISH, or This Week in Skeptical History. All right, this is not your traditional TWISH either. Now we're at the beginning of the year, there is something very, very obvious that we all go through. Because every year, millions of people around the world pledge to lose weight, exercise more, or finally learn a new skill, a new language, or like an musical instrument or whatever. It's the start of January and New Year's resolutions are back in fashion now. So if you think this is a story of achievement and personal triumph, think again. The practice of making New Year's resolutions goes back thousands of years to the Babylonians, who promised gods they would return borrowed items, and the Romans, who reflected on past mistakes and vowed to do better in the year ahead. Obviously, we're not talking about the beginning of January, because that wasn't the beginning of the new year at those times. But it's the New Year tradition, no matter what month and what time of the year it happens.
I'm interested to hear why returning borrowed objects was such a big deal back then. How people didn't they honor the idea that you return things that you have borrowed? They only did that once a year. That's a bit surprising.
I had a teacher at high school. She would often say that she would never lend or return any CDs or books to anyone.
Oh, okay.
So, okay.
Okay, it's honest anyway to say.
I'm not lending you anything. Okay, so let's do a fast forward to today, and the ritual remains remarkably similar, no matter what era, what time in history we are. It's a symbolic fresh start, right? Mm-hmm. What hasn't changed is the actual outcome. Modern research paints a very, interesting picture that brings us back to Earth. Studies consistently show that the vast majority of resolutions fail.
Yeah.
So There is one often cited figure that estimates that nearly 9 out of 10 resolutions never make it past February. And people feel confident when they make their resolutions, but the enthusiasm fades quickly. And most goals, they're often vague, like get healthier or save more. Even these vague ones fall by the wayside. Part of the problem lies in the nature of resolutions themselves. Historically, they were ritualistic pledges tied to gods or moral reflection, not structured plans for habitual change. Today, many resolutions are no different. Broad, aspirational, and they're lacking concrete steps or accountability. And psychologists will tell you that without an actual concrete plan of steps, you would not be able to achieve much if it's just general rules or the general aims that you mention.
It's more or less wishful thinking, isn't it? I mean,
exactly.
Next year, you could just as easily say, next year I will be richer. But that's not a plan. That's just a wish.
Yeah, how do you plan to achieve that?
Yeah, you have to have a plan.
I think, I don't remember which book of Richard Wiseman's mentions that, but he tends to unveil a couple of fraudulent ideas in the field of psychology, and especially popular psychology, of which there are loads of books out there that will scam you into thinking that, it's if you just project your wishes, the universe will, like The Secret, the universe will reply and it will grant your wishes. No, it won't. The universe doesn't care about you. So you have to take care of yourself if you want your New Year resolutions to work. So without planning, monitoring, or social support, even the most well-intentioned goals are unlikely to survive the first few weeks of the year. Social pressures add another layer to this. People make resolutions because it's expected, not because they have intrinsic motivation. Well, some of us do, and do make those. But while the fresh start effect of January the 1st may boost the initial enthusiasm, it often quickly fades, leaving many to abandon their pledges because there are more important things coming your way. Life gets in the way. Your everyday habits are stronger than your newly found goals in life. So the history of New Year's resolutions is not a story of success. It is instead a story of enduring hope, repeated annually. The tradition persists because humans love the idea of renewal, even if the evidence suggests that year after year, we rarely follow through. In short, New Year's resolutions have been around for thousands of years, but their historical track record is remarkably consistent. They are a testament to human optimism, not a roadmap to achievement. So please consider it as such.
Yeah, interesting paradox there. They've been around for a long time, but they don't last for more than a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. But that brings us to the news items that will cover what's been happening in the last days of December.
Yes, so well, obviously I'm not the only one looking back at last year, of course. A lot of fact-checkers are doing that as well. And one of the organizations dedicated to fact-checking is Full Fact. Mm-hmm. They put together what they call their 5 lessons learned regarding fact-checking, things that we could learn from going forward. It's a bit UK-centric, I must say, but let's go through them anyway and see what they found. The first one is that 2025 was the year that AI turbocharged online misinformation. That was actually the same reflection I did earlier. It's not surprising, of course. No one has missed how this is happening. According to Full Fact, the number of false items they have checked that contained some element of AI was almost 6 times higher for 2025 than they were for 2024. Ooh. So, that's bad. Especially it's been used in disinformation regarding how authorities are trying to limit people's personal freedoms. There's information about how they, quote unquote, are trying to control you, the general public. So that's one thing. The second one is very specific. They say that Reform UK versus Labour is becoming a key battleground for political claims. And as skeptics, we are not surprised to see Reform UK and Nigel Farage mentioned in this context. Reform UK got this year's Rusty Razor Award, We saw that at QED. And we have given Farage a really wrong award last year as well, before he got the Rusty Razor award.
So we beat the skeptics to it.
We've basically all the skeptics have been handing him bad awards this year, or last year rather,
and deservedly so.
And also Reform UK. I use it almost interchangeably, because Reform UK is Nigel Farage and the other way around as well. So they never try to even pretend to justify their bogus claims, because they don't have to. They know it works anyway. They can just say something and then they move on to the next thing. And it gets around anyway, and people get a feeling that there must be something in it, because I hear it from everywhere. Well, actually, you only hear it from Nigel Farage, but then that spreads in his circle of, his supporters, I guess. Especially, it seems that younger people and people who feel marginalized for some reason are very easily trapped by this or taken by these claims. The third thing that they mention is that AI tools are not just used for generating false claims, they're also being used to fact-check claims. Yeah. And that can go wrong. People are trying to fact-check things themselves by, for instance, asking Grok or any AI tool maybe. You just type in, at Grok, is this true? And press enter, and then you see what happens. But Grok is often wrong as well. Sometimes it's right, I guess, but don't trust chatbots to give you the final verdict on something. If you do use ChatGPT or something, ask your tool to supply you with the real source. And then you click on that and check out the source as well. And sometimes you'll find it's just baloney.
Yeah, but the funny thing about this is that when you use AI to fact check, you have to fact check the AI because it is often wrong about stuff. Then it defies the whole purpose. So it's
but sometimes it helps because it helps you quicker. It's a Google machine. That's how I think about it. AI very often can Google things faster than I can do, but then I need to check the results by looking at the links it supplies, because sometimes it just makes things up.
Because not all of them supply the links either.
So well, if they can't do that, then you should change the tool, I think, and use something else.
Exactly.
The fourth thing that the full fact mentions is that when it comes to monitoring the government's delivery, the small print really matters. That's how they phrase it. And what they mean is, they have something called a government tracker. And that's especially to monitor claims done by the UK government. And even if Full Fact obviously focuses a lot on the UK, I'm pretty sure the situation is the same globally. And basically the sitting government is framing their achievements very often as remarkable or great, when in some cases they actually are doing worse than the previous government. But they don't mention that. They say, this year we have achieved X number of whatever. And they say, but that can sound very impressive, but maybe it's not so impressive when you actually look into it. And then the fifth and final conclusion is something that we skeptics are very familiar with, and something that has always been true, and that is, as they put it at Full Fact, some zombie claims just won't die. And what they mean is, with a zombie claim, is that that's a claim that has been debunked again and again and again, but it will never go away. If something is out there once, it never goes away. It may fade a bit sometimes, but then it comes back again. And that's always true. I mean, who thought that the moon landing hoax would be something people discussed now? But it's still around there. It never goes away. So there we have it. Fact-checking is a never-ending endeavor, and it may often feel like a battle that you can never win, but there are organizations out there fighting the good fight, and that is a good thing. And I've said before, when people say that we skeptics have failed in fighting misinformation, everything is still very, very bad, remember that we don't know what it would have looked like if we hadn't done what we are doing.
Yeah.
So we should still carry on and just hope that we are making a difference. And I, for one, commit to do that for a little while longer anyway.
Yeah, the difficult thing about this is that it's not very much of a scientific attitude, not a scientific approach to things. But occasionally we end up seeing some kind of research that shows how debunking can achieve something, but still, it's a hope-based thing that we do.
Yeah, well, we can't lay down and die,
evidence,
right?
Yeah,
we have to
exactly.
keep trying.
Exactly. Yeah. But we need the responsibility of political actors as well, right? Because they need to realize that it's not serving only them to use, for example, any kind of AI tools to manipulate pictures, videos, audio, and do even deepfakes. So in Italy, on the 16th of December, a group of major political parties signed a voluntary commitment not to create or disseminate deepfake content targeting their political opponents. I think this is a massive achievement.
Yeah.
I have to mention that the initiative was jointly organized and published by two Italian fact-checking organizations, Pagella Politica and Facta. They invited parliamentary parties to adopt 3 specific principles. 1. To refrain from cheating or spreading deepfakes of opposing politicians. 2. If a deepfake is shared inadvertently, remove it and acknowledge the error publicly. The third is to inform and raise awareness about the risks posed by AI-generated content. Now, I think this is very progressive for parliamentary actors, for politicians. And what's even more phenomenal is that the signatories to the pledge included a wide range of parties from across the Italian political spectrum. So, just to mention the larger ones, Fratelli d'Italia, Partito Democratico, these are among the largest parties, Movimento 5 Stelle, Forza Italia, on and on and on and on, we can list them. But notably, the right-wing Lega party, led by...
what's her face?
Matteo Salvini.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
They did not sign the commitment.
They
were the only party in the Italian parliament.
They committed to continue to spread nonsense. Right?
Exactly. So, according to the party spokespersons, Lega's reason for declining to sign was that it viewed the pledge as a journalistic campaign rather than a formal political agreement. And it stated that it does not intend to use these methods, video deepfake against political opponents, for example, which we consider unacceptable. So we just have to take their word for it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So the problem with this is that if anyone else adheres to this pledge and they play it safe, that's very nice. But that gives an advantage for Lega if they want to do those attacks. Because obviously, they're not going to be affected by that. So it's a bit of a cheat. It's like a very cheap action. And Lega also noted that the government has already taken steps on the topic of deepfakes and emphasized its preference to respond with facts rather than appeals. But it's an interesting approach. But Lega's choice to abstain from the agreement stood out because it was the only significant parliamentary party not to join. Yeah. And the fact-checking organizations and media reports characterized the pact as a step toward greater self-regulation and public awareness of AI-based manipulation in Italy, but also reiterated that the commitment is not legally binding and carries no statutory penalties if breached. But I think it's a step in the right direction. Even if it's a bit toothless, it's still a very important gesture. And that gives an opportunity for all other organizations. I'm pretty sure that CICAP does that too, that they try to explain what's going on with deepfake and why it's not the way to go.
And CICAP being the Italian skeptic organization, the big one, just to yeah. All right, so it seems to be an episode with a theme of fact-checking. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, a specific one. This is a claim that Snopes checked. And the statement that they checked was, and it was about Sweden, so I had to talk about it, I feel.
Yeah, of course.
The statement is, quote, Sweden imports trash from other countries because it doesn't have enough to fuel its waste-to-energy plants that produce electricity and heating, end quote. So we have to, in Sweden, import trash because we are so good at disposing of it that we don't have enough of it. That's basically what they are trying to say with that statement. And Snopes actually gives this statement a verdict of mostly true. They have these different categories. And I think that's a little generous, but let's check. I'm checking them now, checking the fact checkers, right?
Okay.
So it is true that Sweden imported almost 4 million metric tons of waste in 2024, mainly from the UK, from Norway and Italy. And that was about 19% more than the year before and close to 200% more than in 2010. But that's going back a while. And it's also true that Sweden is doing well when it comes to handling waste overall. Figures from 2019, which was the newest I could get actually, where I could see all the countries, says that of all the waste generated in Sweden, 32% is recycled, so very good.
That's very good.
14% is composted, and the rest, 53%, that actually ends up to 99%, but anyway, 53% is burnt in these waste-to-energy plants, generating energy. In addition to that, nothing is burnt without producing energy, and nothing is placed in landfills. So that's good. Sweden's doing well. I'm proud.
You have no landfills whatsoever?
No landfills whatsoever. If there is any, you round it off to 0%. So it's very, very small if there is any. Yeah. But
that's impressive.
Here comes the twist, Andras. If we look at other countries in the EU, Finland and Slovakia, for instance, they are burning a bigger share of their waste in plants generating energy. 7 other countries are almost as good as Sweden, burning more than 40% of their waste for energy. When it comes to not putting waste in landfills, almost all EU countries have stopped doing so. So it's not just Sweden. And when it comes to actual recycling, 5 other countries are doing better than Sweden. And that is Slovenia, Germany, Latvia, Belgium, and Denmark. And Germany is a big one, of course. So when it comes to waste handling in general, Sweden is doing fine, but it's not ranked as number 1 in any of these measures when it comes to EU. So how about the second part of the claim, that Sweden has to import waste to keep their waste-to-energy plants going? If we can help other countries to burn their waste in an environmentally sound way, that is excellent, of course. But it seems that that's not the reason it happens. The import seems to be for financial reasons only, and there is no shortage of other fuel that could be used instead in Sweden if we ran out of waste. All in all, the claim as it is shared online is partially true from a technical point of view. It's not wrong. Sweden is importing waste to burn for energy, but it's not because it's necessary or because we are more environmentally friendly than anybody else. It's just for financial reasons. And the claim as stated online gives the false impression that Sweden is exceptionally good when it comes to waste handling, which doesn't seem to be the case. Everybody is pretty good within the EU. And it's just business. Overall, Sweden is about average for like most EU countries. And therefore, I think this is a good example of how a mostly true, quote-unquote, statement, which was the ranking that Snopes gave it, a mostly true statement can be used to spread misinformation or give a false impression. So I would give this statement rather the verdict of misleading.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, speaking of misleading claims, we do know that autism invites a lot of those, not only regarding the origins of the condition, but also how treatable it might be or might not be. So, a major international research team has completed the most comprehensive scientific assessment yet of the complementary, alternative, and integrative medicinal practices. Well, we like to refer to them as scams that are used to treat autism in general. The study, which was published in Nature Human Behavior, systematically reviewed the highest level of available evidence to determine whether these interventions are effective or safe, which is another very important question regarding these. So, Autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental condition characterized by differences in communication, social interaction, and behavior. And I know this is an oversimplification of it, but many people on the spectrum and caregivers turn to scams. So complementary, alternative, and integrative medicinal practices such as animal-assisted therapies, acupuncture, probiotics, music therapy, herbal remedies, and dietary supplements, and they believe that they may improve symptoms or the quality of life. Surveys indicate that up to 90% of autistic individuals have tried at least one such therapy. So, to assess what the scientific evidence actually shows, the researchers conducted an umbrella review. This method aggregates results from existing meta-analyses, which themselves combine data from multiple clinical trials, allowing an overall evaluation of the evidence for each type of intervention. The team searched 5 major scientific databases up to the end of 2023 and identified 53 systematic reviews containing 248 distinct meta-analyses. These meta-analyses collectively covered 19 different CAM modalities and approaches and data from more than 10,000 participants. So this is a huge amount of data to work with. For each meta-analysis, the authors re-estimated pooled effects and the effect sizes using consistent statistical methods. They assessed methodological quality with the MSTAR2 tool and evaluated the certainty of evidence using an algorithmic version of the internationally recognized GRADE framework. Now, the key finding is very clear. There is no high-quality evidence that any of the complementary, alternative, or integrative treatments reviewed consistently improve core or associated symptoms of autism.
Yeah. I'm not surprised, of course, but you have to study this scientifically. You can't just assume that it doesn't work. But yeah, well.
I have to mention that some of the modalities, a very small number of them, showed potential or statistically significant effects in some outcomes. These results were supported only by very low quality evidence, though, which means that the findings are unreliable and may be due to bias, or small sample sizes or study design limitations, which there are a lot of. The review also found that safety data are generally scarce. So apparently, this is not a priority when it comes to these interventions. So this is something that has to change, because safety should be first. Fewer than half of the interventions had any formal evaluation of adverse events, tolerability, or acceptability, which makes it difficult to weigh potential harms against any claimed benefits. That's another red flag there, that it should not be applied, any of these. Because usually when it's traditional medicinal practices or science-based medicinal practices, one of the most important parts of those assessments is whether they are safe to apply. That should be the priority. As part of the project, the authors developed an open access online database to help clinicians, researchers, and families explore the evidence behind specific modalities and approaches. The platform presents detailed results for each intervention, including the quality and certainty of the underlying evidence. So it's a very useful tool if you want to just get a general idea of how to approach this. And it was conducted by scientists at Paris Nanterre University, Paris Cité University, and the University of Southampton, and funded by the French Agence Nationale de la Recherche, or the National Science Agency. In summary, this large umbrella review concludes that despite the widespread use of alternative therapies in autism, none of the evaluated treatments currently has robust scientific support for effectiveness, and safety has been inadequately studied. Decisions about such interventions should therefore be grounded in rigorous evidence, not isolated or low-quality studies. Plus, we know at the moment, autism is not something that is curable. You have to, depending on how serious the condition is, whereabouts on the spectrum you are, you have to have interventions to improve quality of life, but that should be based on scientifically sound therapies and practices, and definitely consultation with professionals and not quacks.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not something that necessarily has to be cured, quote unquote. Maybe that's even the wrong word, because, of course, if some people have it very badly, and so they are barely functional, but a lot of people have autism in a way that they are just a little bit different, and that's part of their personality. And you have to remember that as well.
Yeah. So it should not be dealt with as an illness. No. It's a condition that you have to live with for the rest of your life if you were born with it, because you were born with it. That's one of the most important factors as well. It's not something that is caused by anything like vaccinations or stuff. Yeah.
No, RFK Jr., please take note.
Yeah.
I'm sure he will change his mind now. Okay. Andras, are you following the Infinite Monkey Cage podcast?
Yes, I am.
Yes, and you're sad because you know the news.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, for those who are not aware, the Infinite Monkey Cage is a BBC science radio show and a podcast with Brian Cox and Robin Ince. It's been going on for 16 years, and it's really very good. And I really enjoy listening to it when it comes out. They come out in seasons, so it's not every week or so, but whenever they launch a new season, I'm there listening. It's very entertaining and educational, very based in science and comedy. Would you believe it?
Yeah.
And I think Brian Cox and Robin Ince, of course, should be very well known to our listeners. Brian Cox, of course, is a British physicist and a prolific science communicator.
And a musician.
Yes, a musician as well, believe it or not. We have quoted him many times on this show as well. Robin Ince is a comedian, a book lover, and also a science aficionado, and an overall great human being, in my opinion. If you were at the latest, or last, I should say, QED, you cannot have missed him because he was the MC, and he did it fantastically as we expected. He's been there before, and really great. So he's a great mensch, if that's a word like I'm allowed to use, I don't know. Now, Robin Ince has never been shy of stating his opinion about things. He's very humanistic and inclusive in his points of view, and he has always stood up for compassion and for caring about people who, for some reason or other, tend to be marginalized in society, perhaps for being autistic, neurodivergent, and I believe he places himself on a spectrum as well. Or if people are belonging to the LGBTQ community, he's always very supportive of those as well, not afraid of expressing his opinions publicly. The very sad news is that he has now felt forced to quit his commitment to the Infinite Monkey Cage, which is a show that he was instrumental in creating. And he says it's breaking his heart, he said, to have to leave it. And the reason is that he was told by the BBC to tone down his very frank opinions about things, including Donald Trump, but also the need to support LGBTQ persons and other groups. So the BBC has basically tried to control the positions that he has taken as a private citizen outside of the show, because they felt somehow that they would reflect badly on the BBC. That's terrible.
No, I think I think it has more to do with the current state of society, of British society. That the BBC is probably the leadership of the BBC is probably scared of the backlash that it could follow from society at large, and that's very sad because the BBC used to be a beacon of decency.
Yeah.
Instead of shying away from supporting these, very humanistic ideas.
Yeah. And maybe they are afraid that Trump will sue them again. But come on.
That's another thing.
But this is not for... The thing that they are being sued for now is something that happened on a BBC broadcast. This is not this. This is... in the Infinite Monkey Cage, they don't talk about Trump. I can't recall anyway that they've done that. And anyway, so I don't like the term cancel culture because it's so often used by people who are on the opposite side of decency, people who are complaining that they are being excluded from certain venues like the BBC or something else because of their quote-unquote inconvenient opinions. But those people almost always come from a position of hatred, be it racism or bigotry or misogyny or things like that. And that's not what's happening here. Robin Ince is standing up for people who have been marginalized or are being discriminated against by others. That's the opposite of hate speech, really. Mm-hmm. And so if you take a humanistic stand like Robin Ince is doing, and you express your support for people who are unjustly persecuted or discriminated against, that's different, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And an institution like the BBC should know that. So I'm very much, as you can hear, on the team Robin Ince here. I will certainly miss hearing him on the Infinite Monkey Cage, and I don't see how they can go on without him. He's such an integral part of that. Such a nice guy, and clearly with his heart in the right place. So good on him for taking a stance. I'm very sad to see the BBC being on the wrong side of things here, I think.
Yeah. I wish we could do more than just express our support, because we totally agree, the two of us here, when it comes to how we see Robin Ince and his work. Yep. And speaking of his work, I'd like to mention that I recently finished listening to the audiobook version of his latest book, Normally Weird and Weirdly Normal, My Adventures in Neurodiversity. Exactly, and he narrates it himself, so that's a plus. So I decided I'm not going to go for the hard copy or the printed version. I'm going to go for the audiobook, because I just love listening to him explaining stuff, and he does it brilliantly. Yeah, good. Yeah. So I do recommend it to everyone.
That's a good idea. Maybe I should check it out.
All right. Still staying in the UK, but mentioning again the topic of AI. It looks like 1/3 of UK citizens have turned to AI for emotional support, which is the finding of an official research organization. That is a new report from the UK's government-affiliated AI Security Institute, and that reveals that roughly 1 in 3 adults in the United Kingdom have used artificial intelligence systems for emotional support, companionship, or social interaction. 1 in 3.
I'm actually not surprised, but do go on.
But I think that's alarming, especially given that AI is not a human. It doesn't have the qualities that are necessary for emotional support. And we have seen a couple of examples of that going way off. I think we mentioned it on the show as well, that in some cases there have been suicide cases as well, when the AI just gave straightforward information as to how to hang yourself. So it's not what you do. No.
The problem is that the AI is designed to try to agree with you and please you and do what you want it to do. So if you prompt them the wrong way, it will actually help you do bad things. And it doesn't have, as you said, it's not human. It doesn't have it's a machine, right?
It's a machine, and it's programmed. Yeah. And there have been tweaks since those cases, but it's still not the right tool. But according to the AI Security Institute, and there is a First Frontier AI Trends report that was recently published, nearly 10% use AI for emotional purposes weekly, and around 4% turn to it daily. The most common tools cited are general-purpose AI assistants, including conversation systems like ChatGPT, and voice assistants such as Amazon Alexa. While many users report positive experiences, the report also highlights potential harms. It notes high-profile cases, including a US teenager's death after discussing suicide with an AI, as I mentioned earlier, prompting calls for further research into conditions under which emotional harm may occur and how safeguards could mitigate risks. In addition to emotional use, the report signals broader concerns about AI behavior, such as the capacity of some chatbots to influence users' political opinions while delivering inaccurate information. We covered part of that in earlier episodes of this podcast as well. So the survey was based on a representative sample of more than 2,000 UK adults, underscoring how widely personal AI use has spread beyond traditional productivity tasks into the realm of emotional and social engagement. But I do recommend everyone to go and try to seek out the company of a real person if you have something to discuss with an emotional side of it.
Don't trust the machine.
Don't trust the machine. At least not yet.
For anything, really.
Anything.
Double check anything. Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the news round, which means that we are about to find out who's been really wrong lately.
Yeah, this week's Really Wrong was suggested by listener Volodymyr. Thank you very much for that. We always love to hear from our
He's a regular.
Listeners, as we've said before. By the way, from his name, I'm guessing it's likely at least that he is from Ukraine, but I don't know that. But I'm happy to see that we do have listeners in Ukraine. I know you Ukrainians, you have a lot of other things to worry about at the moment, but I'm glad that some of you can find time to listen to us as well.
Yeah. Would the Russian version of that be Vladimir?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. Yeah. So Volodymyr's tip is about the proposed but not yet approved EU rule known as the Child Sexual Abuse Regulation, or chat control. And nowadays it's very often called chat control 2.0 because the first version died somewhere during negotiations. And what it's supposed to do is to force online platforms to scan communication for content that could be promoting child sex abuse. And which is, of course, a very legitimate goal to have, no doubt about that. We want to stop that. But as Volodymyr points out, and many others have done as well, that will mean a break of encryption of all online communication. Because if you want to scan what people are talking about, you have to listen to them. And that would seriously damage tools that are in place to protect journalists, officials, activists, abuse victims, privacy-sensitive minorities and businesses and everyone, really. It's like having all phones tapped in the EU at the same time, just to catch one thing. But let's say that we ignore all this. I'm pretty sure there are things to get around this anyway. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. But there are VPN technologies and other stuff, so people can get around it anyway. So it wouldn't even be effective, probably. So it seems to me very likely, anyway, that bad actors will still be able to share this kind of content, while all the rest of us will be monitored for no reason. So let me quote what Volodymyr says when he writes to us. He says, quote, "This is a textbook really wrong case. Seemingly good intentions, poor understanding of the matter, and dangerous consequences." End quote. And I can only agree. And therefore, the proposed regulation to prevent and combat child sex abuse, also known as the Child Sexual Abuse Regulation, or CSAR, and also commonly known as Chat Control, or Chat Control 2.0. So you can see a lot of people have talked about this. But that, whatever you call it, that gets this week's award for being really wrong.
Yeah. Whew. Thank you very much for that, Pontus, and to Volodymyr as well.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the first episode of 2026.
Woohoo!
Obviously, we would need to end on a quote, and I thought that the best choice would be a quote from Robin Ince. And this is from another one of his books, which is also available as an audiobook as well, also read by himself. Mm-hmm. That is The Importance of Being Interested, Adventures in Scientific Curiosity. And the quote is, "I wonder how it can be considered that science disenchants the world. The power of the spells of physics to make the empty solid and nothing something seem greater than anything I have ever read in folktales."
Yeah, I fully agree. The wonder of science, right? You don't take away the magic in the world just because you focus on science. Science is not magic, but it has magical abilities. But as a contrast to the magic in the folktales, as he says, is that this is something we can actually understand. We can understand how it works. And that is another wonder in itself.
Yeah, I often mention when it comes to this topic, I often mention the book of Richard Dawkins, Unweaving the Rainbow. Science, Delusion, and the Appetite for Wonder, because that deals with the same topic. It's one thing to admire the rainbow for the beauty of it. But once you start to understand what's going on, what's causing that beauty, it adds another layer of that beauty, another layer of appreciation that is far beyond just appreciating the beauty of it. It's a deeper understanding, and it makes you connected to it even more. And that is something that I really love about scientific inquiry.
Yeah, it increases the wonder rather than taking away from it, I think.
It does. All right. But that really concludes this week's episode. So many, many thanks, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
Let's keep doing this.
Yes. I think we can't be stopped. At this point, we have come so far.
Well, we could be, but please don't try. We might as well keep going on, and we will. And many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in and staying with us. Please continue doing so. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då.
Visslat. En boldog új évet!
Oj! Gott nytt år!
This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
Yes. Was it Happy New Year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy New Year, everyone.